to Freshly Forever, a podcast that gives you fascinating insights week after week. Here's your host, Vi Kumar.
Hey folks, welcome to another episode on podcast Freshly Forever. Today we have here with us Linda Sparrowe. Linda is a book coach, developmental editor, longtime yoga teacher, and so much more. And she tries to integrate a lot of yoga and mindfulness into her writing and into her book coaching as well. Welcome, Linda, to the show.
Oh, thank you so much. It's so nice to be here.
Okay. And we are here today to kind of focus on yoga and mindfulness as an aid to writing and book publishing. And so why don't we start with your journey as a writer, how it evolved and how it shaped into what it is today?
All right. I started writing actually when I was 8 years old because I found that I didn't have an outlet for my experiences, for my feelings. And I came from a family that didn't really feel comfortable with emotions. So I used to write everything down, either my dreams or what happened to me every and then sort of fast forward many years, I went to college and one of my professors in grad school said to me, just so interesting. I've never met anyone who could write so well and say nothing.
So you talked less, but you wrote more.
Exactly. So I writing, and then I had an opportunity. I got into magazines fairly early, and I got an opportunity. So my background, my graduate studies, my undergraduate studies were in the ancient teachings of yoga, as well as Buddhism and Hinduism and Sanskrit and all that. And so I was a long time meditator. So I was kind of steeped in that. And I had an opportunity to work at Yoga Journal. So I thought, well, I have this graduate studies, which I can do literally nothing with, but it's perfect because at least in Yoga Journal, I can translate yoga poses and stuff. So I became a part of the Yoga Journal team. And so yoga became what I wrote about because that's what people asked for, right? And I didn't at first talk or write much about yoga poses. That's not really my interest, and that's not really how I combine yoga with writing. My very first foray into publishing was to write about yoga. I wrote 20 years ago now. I wrote the Women's Book of Yoga and Health, which has really seriously been around 20 years. And it's still going strong. I still blessedly get royalties still from that book. And we're doing a revise this year for the first time. So
how nice.
Yeah. So I was just known for yoga. So people would ask me to write about it. And I was really, really fortunate to get a book contract when I had never written a book before. So, that was sort of my start on the path for publishing, and getting paid for writing and getting paid for it, really.
Okay. You have also written Yoga at Home.
I have.
Yoga, other than the Women's Book of Yoga and Health. And you have also written Yoga Mama. So what made you feel you had to focus solely on yoga? Was it the start with the first book? And was it because of already your association with the journal that you chose to write about yoga? And given a choice, do you think you would have delved into other nonfiction areas as well?
Well, I have by now, but I think that I would have liked to have broadened a lot earlier in my career. There came a time when I only wrote for publication if I got paid for it, and I've been in the yoga community for many, many years, and publishers, agents would find me and, so that was sort of hard to say no. But by the time I wrote Yoga Mama book, someone had asked me, a publisher had asked me because the vice president of Shambhala at the time was pregnant and she loved the women's book, but she said, I need something more. So I said, well, I would write about it and have the little sequences like you're supposed to if I can expand that more, really talk about what it is about yoga that touches us, that helps us discover who we are. You know, we have to say what, what's happening in our bodies and to create a relationship. Yeah, and so that's what I did.
Okay.
Now, since then, I've written about a number of different ideas and topics, but not always with my name attached. They call a ghostwriter, and there on occasion there'll be a with Linda Sparrowe either on the cover or on the inside cover page, right? Everything from about infertility to I worked with an 80-year-old shaman and I wrote his about his teachings and his life. I've written a book on neuroscience and spirituality. And I think that what really pulls all of that together is the way that I love to connect mindfulness and our connection with ourselves to what we have to say.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, because that's what I was going to ask you. Even if somebody came and gave you a book contract, even if that was the first introduction for you into work, you possibly could not have done it unless you had that inner zeal and that passion to bring that message out, correct?
100%. 100%. And I teach now. I have an online course for writers, and I coach a lot of aspiring writers and also a lot of writers who have just kind of gotten stuck. And it's always going back to practice, going back to what wants to be known, And so I don't think that, certainly for me and the writers I work with, I don't think it's enough to write what you know. I mean, I could write, my books have been translated into like 6 or 7 languages. I can write about all that stuff if I wanted. But after a while, I don't even see the point. What I see is that I want to write more about what I wonder about, right? What I linger over. What is it that speaks to me? The only way that I've figured out how to do that is to listen to what wants to be known within who I am.
And that probably helps you connect with people who are kind of wondering about the same thing, right?
Exactly.
So that helps establish a connection right there with the potential audience.
Yeah, exactly. Because I'm inviting, almost everything that we write about is an invitation to someone.
Yeah. And you say, Linda, yoga and mindfulness inform your unique approach to the writing process. And can you take us further on that thought, shed more light? Because
Absolutely.
Brainstorming and refining ideas, they are a big piece in a writer's journey.
And I love to brainstorm. It's one of my favorite things. It really is. Because in brainstorming, the rules are really clear. It's open. Judgment, that we're just playing, we're throwing things out just to see what sticks, right? And it's generally speaking, it can be just the two of us, or it can be a group that is really open to. And so here's an example. One woman came to me and wanted to write a book actually on pregnancy and yoga. And I said, and she had, she's really well known in the field. She's very excited. And I said, I think it's been done, and obviously I did it too. So I said, let's look and see what else you could do. And so we just started playing and brainstorming. And what ended up happening is, let's see what's unique about you. What is unique within your wisdom mind, what's unique within your knowledge base? What is your voice? What is your contribution? And how's that going to look? And so we actually created the idea of doing this sort of coffee table book where we look at women all around the world and how they gave birth, how, what was beneficial to them, what was a challenge, what got in their way. I mean, all of those things. And it was a completely unique idea. So it was just, from brainstorming and playing. And what I think is really important in mindfulness, what's really important for all writers, is to be able to really silence and being able to go inward to see what's there is really important. And so when I teach, I use a lot of prompts just to play, like, what is your voice? What is your relationship to what you have to say? And so I'll come up with a prompt, and then I do a little guided visualization. And I want you to really go inward and listen to what wants to be known. And that's what we ask all the time. And what's asking to be revealed? Like what? So here's this prompt. I want you to write about a time when you connected with someone in a really surprising way. I'm just going to make So then my invitation is, let's go deep. Let's just play. Let's go inward and find that memory inside of your body. What does it feel like in there? Where does it land? Where is it in my body? And then be there. And allow the story to tell itself. Allow that to come forth. And out of the silence, as you come out of the visualization, just begin to write. Don't think about it. Don't worry about grammar. Don't wonder what's next. And if you get stuck, the invitation is, what I really mean to say is, and then just keep going, keep going, keep going. And that frees you up from this editor that's looking over your shoulder. It frees you up from, okay, who am I writing to? Because it's too early, First have your idea. It's just a play. It's like, what is my interpretation? What is my voice? What I'm wondering about? Where is that, right? And
so it helps bring the authenticity of the writer.
100%. And I often think that even if you're a speaker and you don't write, even if you write for science journals or peer-reviewed journals, do TED Talks, whatever it is, I'm not actually in finding your voice and telling your story. I'm not really saying that we're all writing memoirs, we're all writing personal essays. That's not what this is. It's like, what distinguishes you? Like if you're writing on a scientific journal and you have this really interesting idea that you want to get across, what makes it you, right? And not a Wikipedia or not a dictionary or an encyclopedia. What makes it you? What is it that you linger over? What is it that you're drawing out that no one else does? Whether you're teaching a class, giving a talk, it's that sense of connection with the voice.
And I'm sure you would have had people say, Linda, I know nothing about yoga and mindfulness. What is this that you're talking about, right? So what do you say to those kind of folks? How do you help them in the process? And how do you guide them in this approach of bringing out their authenticity or their unique messaging?
That's an interesting question, because a lot of the people that I coach don't do yoga at all, or meditate or whatever. And so it's the language, really. First of all, I'm not interested. I'm not asking people to do 12 sun salutes before they start. Right?
True.
Right? I'm not interested in that. Some people do, and that's awesome. What I often do is people will say, I really don't know. I don't know what to say. I don't know what my voice is. And I say, you know what? I think you're getting in your own way. Why don't we just stop? Why don't we just get silent for a little while? I'm going to guide you just to inquire within, no big deal. Let's just, and by the sound of my voice, by the things that I'm saying, I'm just guiding you to breathe. Because what happens when we're in a group setting is often people don't want to share, don't want to talk about, don't want to brainstorm, because they go, oh, this person clearly is cooler than me, or this person is like a longtime writer. I don't have anything to say. Right?
People fear the thought of being judged, correct?
Oh my God, of course, right? And so my invitation is silent. Just close your eyes. No one is here but you. No one. So let's just see what's there, right? And so when I take you in, I will take you into your body and I'll say, okay, invite your mind in. Where does your mind go, right? And then it's like, okay, like somebody will say to me, I really want to write about this topic and I don't know where to start. I don't even know what I have to say about it. So I have this topic. So let's go in and let's just bring that topic forward, right? Listen, just see it. Don't try to grasp it. Don't try to like pull it apart. Just see it as a whole. Okay. I want to talk about what happened to me when I was 10.
Mm-hmm.
I left my country. I left, and I moved to a place where I had never been before. I want to talk about that, but it's so big. And so it's like, okay, right close. So I just take you and let's play with that. Where are you? Take yourself back to that place. Feel it. Feel into that place. What did it feel like to be 10? Right? And then what is that 10-year-old saying to you? And so that doesn't mean that you're going to emerge and then immediately be able to write your story, but you emerge with that. And I will often say, pick one part of that that's speaking to you, just one, and write close.
Mm-hmm.
Writing close means get into the detail. Show me what's happening. Show me. Be there, not as a 30-year-old looking back on a 10-year-old's life. Not yet. Be that 10-year-old. Be there. And if you're having trouble, if it's getting in your way, write in present tense.
Mm-hmm.
There, right? And so I will often do that, maybe with different prompts, but I'll often do that. Again, even if you're preparing for a TED Talk, or even if you're writing something like an academic paper, which is a different kind of writing for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But wherever there's space, wherever there is a moment to be you want to be
mm-hmm.
there.
Rather, it helps that clarity of thought come into the limelight as I see it.
Right? Because also in writing close, in moving in to the essence of what you have to say, even if it's a paragraph, 2 paragraphs, whatever, it's so much easier to go from close to expand out than it is to be way out here and go, how do I get back?
Yeah, and it's interesting you said TED Talk or a scientific paper or academic writing. It could even be someone's college application essay.
Oh my gosh, it could. In fact, that would be amazing. Yes, because I used to have to read a lot of essays because when I was hiring interns, for example, I would have them just, write like an essay about themselves, like in a moment of time that,
mm-hmm.
that, you knew whatever, I would have these little prompts. I loved it so much that someone could just take off from that topic and be her own or his own person, right? It was so much fun because, even if they didn't stay on topic, it was the sense of creativity, the sense of, oh, wow, I so clearly know your voice.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And your involvement with comparative religion as far as your educational background and your involvement with Sanskrit, did that contribute to you leaning towards yoga in any way, or were you already into yoga prior to your learning Sanskrit?
That's so funny. So when I was 18, and I grew up in the 70s, and so there was a lot of turmoil and a lot of changing, sort of, and in California, so you can imagine what life was like. And I had some pretty serious body issues going on. So I went to college and I only weighed about 89 pounds. So I was not in the best mental or physical health. And I took one course in comparative religion my sophomore year, just because I don't know what else to do, right? And I met this teacher, Raimundo Panikkar, whose mom was a former Catholic nun from Spain, and his dad was a former Brahmin priest from India. And he was this combination of East meets West, and just brilliant, brilliant man. And he sort of took me under his wing. And he would chant Sanskrit, and he would talk about the myths. He would talk about the Gita and and the Vedas and all this, and it just lit a fire under me. And then I started meditating, and I went to transcendental meditation because that's just what we did. And it was so beautiful to me because I'm a lucid dreamer. And so mantra for me brings me into my body really quickly. And so I realized that I am much more in a loving and inquiring relationship with myself when I get quiet. When my mind takes over, and I have an incredibly fast, busy mind. When that happens, I can't find what I need. I can't find that space, right, to listen. And so mantra, visualizations, all of that really helps. And then when I went to Yoga Journal in 1991, I hated asana. Isn't that awful to say? It just didn't work for my body. I had been in ballet and jazz, and I like to move. And all of a sudden, I was in this Iyengar class, and I'm thinking, this is so mean. I just didn't like it at all. And then over the years, as I met different teachers, and I got connected with different ways of, and again, this has to do with voice, right? I was able to find teachers whose way of speaking, way of connecting to practice, way of connecting to the teachings where others didn't. And yet they were teaching the exact same sequences pretty much, right? And so
how you connect with the individual, I think, matters a lot. And that determines whether it's almost like a make or break situation. And I can completely relate to what you're saying there. There are certain teachers that can help you really get immersed in something. And there are certain people that can just, even if it had been your passion, they can make you give it up and leave too. And I know that has happened to me. I mean, in my childhood, I was so much into art. I would draw really well. And, I can completely relate to that. And I see that you have been involved in yoga and mindfulness arena for over 3 decades. How has that whole thing, given what you said, helped you hone your writing skills, and how are you able to translate that to the people that you work with? I know you talked about the visualization aspect, and you talked about the dislike for asanas too. So I guess the nice teachers that helped you transform into the journey of liking asanas and the whole 9 yards of what yoga brings. So did you see a shift in how you wrote further to being more immersed in yoga, or would you say it was just the visualization aspect of it, just the meditative side of it helped you as a person, and that's what you are still able to translate to your clientele now?
I think it's important for me that there's no real distinction between meditation and yoga. Otherwise, what we're looking at is exercise and mindfulness.
So it's an integrative approach.
It has to be, right? I mean, in my body, I do asana and pranayama and meditate really to move into my experience. Right? I mean, yoga is nothing if it's not about creating relationship. When I teach, one of the things that I'm known for, I think, is that I am a consummate brainstormer, that I can take an idea that you have that might be a little amorphous or might be a little confusing, or you don't quite know where to go, and I can see inside of that idea, and a lot of that comes from just taking it in, working it in through my senses, through my body, just to feel it, right? And also, of course, knowing the field so well, like, not just knowing the yoga field, but knowing it in a bigger way, like, what are people interested in, right? What have we done before? What's unique? What makes you? Like, what is your story, and how does that fit into the canon of what's happening in our field?
And do you think, you had there's somewhat of an innate element
100%.
to your being able to think, or do you think, you had to kind of cultivate that aspect?
I think that I found the meditative aspect of yoga and even eventually yoga asana because it spoke to me. As a child, like I said, I was a lucid dreamer. There were times when I could not distinguish between my dreams and real life. Right? And I was always one of these people that paid attention to senses, and probably more of an empath than I would have liked to have been as a kid, right? And so when I met Renmu Dopanakar, and then I met Tartlang Tulku Rinpoche, who's a Tibetan who came over to the States in, I want to say 1974. I met him in 76, and the practices just spoke to me. And I often sort of half in jest say that if I hadn't found them, I have no idea who I would be, right? I just really don't. I mean, even my family goes, have you not practiced today?
And when you said you were such a lucid dreamer, do you think the journaling part helped? And did it help because you were possibly, kind of scared that you could kind of tell everything so vividly and that you had to put something down, take your mind off and write it out in a journal?
That's an interesting question. And I really see that there's a huge difference in journaling and in writing for the public, or even writing the way that I invite people to write for prompts. For me, I needed an outlet to write things down. And I never in my writing distinguished when I was little between writing what my dreams were and writing what was happening yesterday or. And so it was a big old jumble of, things. I'm sure nobody had the slightest idea what I was talking about. But later on, I found this really interesting. So as a child and now as an adult, I was able to go into my dreams and say, ooh, pay attention to this, or to change it if I got scared, because I got scared a lot when I was a little kid. And so I learned how to soften my dreams, how to stop that, if things were crazy. But I think that part of my ability to move deeper has helped me as a writer, as a speaker, as a coach, because it is this whole concept of listening to what wants to be known, like getting out of my own way. And so when I got into college and I kept writing, one of the things that I noticed was that if I were upset and I didn't know how to cry, actually, because I had never been allowed to, right? I would write down exactly what happened, not how I felt about it. I would write the story over and over until I cried. And then I was fine. It just came, got out of my body. I was able to really rinse what was stuck in my body, but only by literally writing what happened next, almost like I was an objective observer.
And so writing was your tool, your gateway to get stuff out of your system. So you were not stuck with that thought and you were not holding on to it. It was your releasing mechanism.
Yeah, in a way, it was the way to release trauma. Right?
And you talked about fear. Did the mindfulness aspect help you overcome fear and kind of settle down? Do you feel more grounded further to?
That's a good question.
Meditation and mindfulness ever since you started incorporating that into your life?
And I think that it was huge huge for me, to also to ground my energy, to really find my feet, find my seat, because I can easily spin out from all kinds of different ideas and what's to do. And it's like, and then get nothing done because, it's all over the place. So meditation, and, just being in my body has helped me not so much not have fear, but to have a relationship with it. Like, what is it asking me to do? What is this? What am I afraid of? Where is it in my body? And it's like, because if I think about one thing that meditation has taught me is that feelings are just energy. They're just moving through unless I attach a story to them. So meditation has really helped me not so much pretend there is no story, but because, people in yoga say, oh, just let it go, let it go. It's like, no, I need to know what it is to let go first. In my inquiry, I want to know and I want to feel what happened. And when I was a little kid, I would get really anxious and I would go, okay, is it this? No. Is it this? And then I would go, oh, wow, that memory suddenly has increased my anxiety. It must be that, right? I want to know what the story is. And then I invite the story to move over to the side. And I want to know where that sensation lives in my body. So if I'm angry, I want to think, okay, is it in my throat? If I open my hands, does that change my anger? Right? If I soften my jaw, will that allow just a little bit of space between my heart and my desire to hurt somebody or whatever it is, So I just go through this process and, it doesn't always work, but again, it's all about creating a relationship. Like, what is it like?
True. And you mentioned body image when you entered into college, and you have done a lot of write-ups and talks on body image, women's health, anxiety, depression. Those are some areas you have focused on. How did this intertwining of yoga and writing happen, Linda?
So once again, I was invited so many times to talk about different aspects of our lives. The women's book, which also touched, and I've done workshops and talks and all kinds of stuff around those topics, right? When I did the women's book, it came out in 2002. Nothing had really been written in yoga about women. It was, it was brand new. And a publisher, I had ghostwritten a book for a yoga person. And the publisher really liked our connection. So she said, it was in New York, and she said, what do you want to write about? And I said, I don't know. I've never written a real book before, right? She said, well, what's new? And I said, yoga is our companion for life. And so nobody really talks about that. So what would it be like for women, to really do a book on some of the stages of our lives? Like, what are our challenges? What are our gifts? What are the joys? What are, So I started looking at that. And then from there, I realized that part of the process of writing is to get to know those aspects of our lives. And so if I'm anxious, for a lot of us, one way to dissipate, to really bring that energy down is to move into our body and often to write it out, right?
Okay. Back in a moment with our guest on Fresh Leaf Forever. And so when you do that with clients, do you think that helps them? So this approach of bringing the mindfulness into the writing for clients when they need to tell their story, how does it translate to their message coming out? We talked about it a little in the past, but I guess I'm asking, say, like foggy mind, flow of thought, or like refining their thought process. presenting a different angle or viewpoint, what is it that you think it has the most impact on when you kind of work with clients?
So when I work with clients, I think it's really important not to go from 0 to 60 right away, right? So
true.
A lot of people say, I have this book idea. I want to write this book. I don't even know where to start. And so my whole thing is, let's put that aside for a moment. Like, let's talk about it. Like, what is this book for you? What is, so what I say is, okay, you have a book idea. So talk me through it. What is the invitation to your reader? When I open this book, what are you inviting me into?
Mm-hmm.
When I finish that last page, what is your hope that I will take away? What is the goal of this book, right? And then what are the steps to get me there?
Mm-hmm.
So it becomes a why this book, why you, why now? That's what publishers always want to know. Why you, why now, why this book? And so we talk about that. And then I say, okay, so for now, let's put that in the back of your mind.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you begin this journey with the idea that you have to fill 250 pages, 300 pages, 150 pages, whatever it is, it's just a way for you to just freeze.
Mm-hmm.
How am I going to do that? What if I have nothing to say? And who's going to read it? Oh my God, who am I? This whole imposter syndrome. Who am I to even think that I could write a book? I mean, all of that, right? I can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it's like, we're just going to take some time. We're just going to play with your voice. You can tell me stories. You can talk about, or, I give you homework all the time. It's like, okay, you're interested in this concept. So your homework is to write 2 pages on one aspect of this, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
story around it. Tell me why you got, what brought you here. Don't even worry about that book, right? Just let's write close, let's play. And then we do that enough times where you feel like, oh, okay, I own this. This feels like me, right? And so the mindfulness part, people talk a lot about meditation being a mindfulness. Mindfulness to me is when you take meditation and you take all your practices and you bring them into your life, right? And I'm particularly interested in the moments in my own writing, in the moments when I am not so mindful, because I find that that's super interesting.
Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. And so discipline becomes a very crucial element for someone who wants to write a book, take it all the way to publishing, right? Because the ability to constantly come back to it on a regular basis, sit and do it. Do you think yoga lends this much needed discipline?
I do. I also think that we don't want to get trapped in the whole advice that you have to write every single day.
Mm-hmm.
Some people don't. It's fine. It's fine. However, writing is, you have a writing muscle, kind of, right? And so if you're trying to get better at something, what do? You practice. You practice yoga, right? There's
Mm-hmm.
thing as a bad meditation, but you sit down every day, even if it's 5 minutes. So some people find that, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to create a structure where I show up at the same time every day. I have my little rituals. I'm going to do that. Other people say, okay, I've got 2 days a week where I can devote to it, or whatever that is, right? But with yoga, what is interesting to me is that I do way better at my own discipline if I have a practice in the morning. And my practice in the morning isn't always a big asana practice,
Mm-hmm.
but I'll do 2 or 3 poses with my, after my pranayama, and my inquiry is, how am I doing and what do I need? If I can ground myself in my practice, then it's much easier for me to then translate that sense of tapas, that sense of discipline, that sense of simplicity, if you will, like burning away everything that is in my way, then I can say, okay, I can do this, right? Sometimes that means taking a walk instead, getting into nature. One thing that writers don't always realize is that what's going on behind the scenes is your brain, your body, your senses are working on the problem. And it's really important. And so if I get stuck, I'll go for a walk, or the biggest thing for me is I take a shower. There's something about water that allows my thoughts to open up. I need a whiteboard in my shower or something, it's just like something so we all need that. Sometimes I go into the kitchen and I cook in the background, and it's not always hidden. Like my mind will be kind of going through the motions, and all of a sudden they go, oh my God, I get it. I get what I needed to say, why I was so stuck. And I might take a break, and then, I just put down my notes, or I use my phone. I have a notes app, and I just add those notes, right?
So how important then is journaling versus writing?
No, it's interesting. They're two different things, I think. Journaling is something that you do for yourself. Morning pages, where you start your day fresh. You start your day empty, as I like to say, right? Or evening. A lot of people, when we're anxious, will write in the evening before bed, because again, that gets your day. We love beginnings, middles, and ends, right? And so we want the day to end. And so we can receive new beginnings. And so journaling is like that. Or if I'm puzzling over something and it's not making sense to me, I'll journal it. And it's like free form. I'm not thinking about it. I'm just writing with an audience in mind is really different. I often encourage people, actually, if you're writing close, if you want to write about something, pick someone to write to. Like, it's like you and I are having a cup of tea and you're telling me this idea that you have. That's exactly the voice. That's the energy that you want when you start to think about, okay, what is this book? What is this article? What is this essay? What is this speech I'm giving? Right? It's as though we have come together and you cannot keep it inside.
So it's that coherence and connection, as I see it.
It is the connection. It's something that you are offering. I mean, you don't want anyone to read your journal, right? I mean, nobody does. Nobody wants that. But you do. I mean, you may find really interesting things that come out of your writing in your journal, and you go, oh my gosh, I have really wondered about that. I'm going to now take that and I'm going to start looking at that in a different way.
And does this writing always have to translate into a book, or could it just be, blogging, anything else, write articles for magazines, things like that?
Yes, it's all about finding your voice and telling your story. That's it. And your story can be, once again, that that you are writing an academic paper on an experiment you did, whatever. It could be, bloggers. I'm not a blogger because I am a really slow writer, and I could never make a living as a blogger because it just takes me too long to figure it out, right? But it's the same thing. You have an audience now. It's someone that you are talking to, and I almost always encourage people to think of one person. Don't think of this big old audience you have out there. Then you're going to get lost, right? So whom are you writing to, right? What do you have to say? And again, it's like, what makes it uniquely yours? What do you wonder about, right? And in a blog, or say that you are thinking about something that happened in the news, right? And you want to blog about it. Chances are there's a whole bunch of other people that are blogging about that very thing. So what is you? So it could be Do you have a personal connection to something that happened in the news? And you start there, right? It could be that this is something that you've been hearing over and over and over again, and you just want to dive in and say, what the hell is this all about, right? So it's the uniqueness of your receiving the information. It's like, where's that landing? And what do I have to say about it? What makes it my job, my dharma, if you will, to get that out to other people?
Fantastic. And it's interesting you said you are a slow writer. So right there, what are the attributes for someone to be a successful author? And is it okay to take their time in coming out with their story? Because should there be like, okay, you got to finish your book in a year's time? Or is it okay to take how much ever time?
But some people take years to write a book. My very first book I was so incredibly fortunate to get a big advance because it was a publisher that had never done a book like this before. And had I done it in a year, like most people could, maybe, it would have been a really nice yearly, enough money for me to live on for that year, right? Instead, it took me 2.5 years to write it. Mm-hmm. And I also had a collaborator, which I was in San Francisco, she was in Boston. And so, that was an element that I don't always recommend. It made it more difficult, fabulous, but more difficult for sure. And it depends on what your goal is for the book that you write, mm-hmm. right? And so if you have something that's timely, obviously you want to get it out there. But I would say that if you're conventionally publishing, if you're going to one of the conventional publishers who gives you an advance to write the book and they do everything, they print it, they just, they design it, they print it, they market it somewhat. Mm-hmm. Then what happens is that you need to, even before you write, some people have already written, but say you're starting fresh and you have this great book idea and you're really excited about it. 2 things need to happen. You need to write a book proposal if you want to do this conventionally. Even if you're self-published, it's kind of good to write a book proposal because it keeps you reined in. It keeps you focused on what this book is instead of, going in a million directions. But you have your book proposal. And then usually a publisher will go, oh my gosh, Vi, I love this book idea. Let's do it. Get a contract. And generally speaking, you have between a year, you could have shorter time if you want, but anywhere between a year and 18 months to complete the book. And then it takes another, depending on the publisher, it could take another several months. I just finished a book for a woman for whom English is her third language, actually. And it's a book on trauma. It's in the publisher's hands now, but it looks like it'll be out in bookshelves in January of 2023.
Okay.
Right. And we started the book a year ago now, and we finished it at the end of January.
Okay. Okay. And you do book proposals, manuscript writing, polishing the manuscripts. So what is the role of mentors and book coaches like you in honing the rhythm, style of writing?
It's hugely important, I think, because I think several things happen when we write, especially when we write a book. If you are an expert in your field and you want to write a book, sometimes you get stuck in the minutia and nobody really cares how many, you're writing pages about it. Like one yoga guy wrote hundreds of words about one bone in the shoulder. I go, that's a little much, right? Can we just get to the point? So, but he nerds out, he just sort of geeks out into what he really knows, right? The other opposite of that is that somebody knows something and she takes giant leaps. So thinking that, well, obviously, if you know this, you know that.
Oh, yeah. Then you're not resonating with the reader.
Right? It's like, wait, what about me? You've lost me. Right?
Exactly.
The other thing that happens a lot is a combination, and this is generally how I get published is a combination of my own narrative, grounding it in science or experiences of other people or what have you. And what happens often is that you'll be writing along and I can feel your voice and we're right there. And you want to ground that idea in this concept over here, these 4 studies that happened or this other person. And suddenly I lose you and you sound like you're writing a dissertation or, you suddenly become Wikipedia.
Mm-hmm.
Into you. So there's a split between your story and how you are connecting your story to, a bigger concept. And that happens a lot in some ways because we get nervous when, it's like I'm going into passive voice because I really put myself out there and say, this is what I believe, or this is what I know. Instead, it's like studies have shown that, this is happening. It's like, it becomes a big yawn. So in a developmental editor really can help you. You'll send me a chapter. You'll be writing your book and we meet every week and I read it out loud to you.
Mm-hmm.
So you can hear yourself. What's the lyricism of my voice? What is right? What's the texture, the quality, the rhythm? And then I'll say, oh, goodness, I suddenly lost you. Right? Or I'm lost, right? And so let's come back. What is it that you're trying to say? Let's play with that. Or I might, when we're not together, I might go through your manuscript and I do all these comments. It's like, do you mean to say this? Or what would it be like if you said this instead?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Can you figure that out? And so I'll give you suggestions. I'll ask you to come back and, explain to me what we're talking about. There was one woman whose book is out. It's a fabulous book. And it's on pleasure, again, more, and there's some yoga involved in that. And she's a therapist. And when she sent me her book proposal, she wanted my comments. And I said that I was not actually deriving any pleasure from reading her book proposal. And it's a book on pleasure.
Mm-hmm.
I want you in that story. I want you, I want it all. And so when I helped her develop her manuscript, she said that every chapter she would say, is Linda deriving any pleasure out of this chapter?
Well, that's great. Instead of somebody being, taking it too harsh and being more of their inner critic, yes. I think, taking it in a positive stride, probably all your mindfulness and meditation sessions with them came in handy for someone to be so accepting of what you said.
Yeah, exactly. And, I don't believe in negative feedback per se. I believe in feedback that's helpful. So too much accolades, too much praise isn't that helpful either. But what I realized is that if you're writing something and I give you feedback of what I think is wrong with your writing, what happens is everything in your mind now, you're questioning everything that you write. Oh my God, what if this is wrong too? I thought that was good. And suddenly she's saying it doesn't work. And suddenly everything starts to come into question. So that's not interesting to me and it's not helpful. So for me to say, this part I just am really loving. And now as you start to move into there, you're losing me. You're losing the texture of your voice. Let me read it to you and see what's missing or what's too much or not enough, right? So we do that together so that you come along because it's your book. And I never want you to put out a manuscript that's out in the world for ever without you really feeling like, yeah, this is really me. This is what I want to say. This is who I am. This is my gift, to my readers.
Yeah, that's the differentiating aspect of that individual and the uniqueness and the quality, right? And so does this change for genres, like say nonfiction versus fiction and stuff like that? And how do you kind of cut out this external noise and achieve focus and stay on your mission, Linda?
So I think two things. I don't work in fiction, I've only helped one person. I don't feel comfortable there. First of all, even though I've been writing for a million years, fiction intimidates me. I mean, the idea of just doing that, I don't even know how to do that. So I'm really a nonfiction kind of person. Sort of all of my growing up, all of my own writing has led me to be able, as a ghostwriter, to become your voice. Because developmental editing or ghostwriting, you never want to be able, any kind of editing really, you don't want to be able to pick up your book and think, oh my God, that's clearly written by Linda. This is written by me, right? I want to be you. And so our time together, our coaching together, our Zoom now, Zoom, whatever, is a way for us to really, get to know one another, to really understand not just what your premise is, not just what your passion is, because, I don't always write from passion, but what I'm writing about, I want to submerge myself into that with you so that it feels like a partnership. It feels like I can support you in bringing forth what it is that you want to write or talk about or anything, right? But and so mindfulness, being mindful of the process, being mindful of what your gift is as a writer, right? And what you really desire to bring forth, having that relationship with it. And sometimes I know it, for some reader or some writers, they go, I don't really get what this means. But in some ways, I want to say, let the story tell itself. Get out of the way. I mean, sometimes, and I'm saying that for myself too, because again, I'm a pretty slow writer. And so I get caught in the weeds where I want all of the sentences to be just perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Stop. Just, what is your story asking for? Just let the story tell itself and see where you go. And I know in fiction, they do that sometimes. Like people will say, I had no idea this character was going to really evolve and, quite like it has. So.
Okay. And I guess your voice, your story, your book, that's your online course.
It is.
You kind of do this group setting of an online course, and also you do the one-on-ones, I guess.
I do a lot of one-on-ones, and then agents or publishers in New York will often ask me to help a writer who has a better idea than capabilities so far, right? And so I coach that person, and then I also sort of dive into the manuscript with them.
Okay.
Right?
Okay. Okay. And if you were to just give some takeaways for listeners to bring their unique voice, because you have just been always such a strong proponent of that. And for the past hour almost in this conversation, we have focused a lot on someone's authenticity. So how best can someone bring out their message, or what can be the inspiration for them to come out with their story listening to this podcast with Linda? So what would be the takeaways?
I think that you need to incorporate a sense of play into your writing, into the process, so that you get familiar with your own voice.
Mm-hmm.
Because you don't want to be fighting with your voice and trying to write a book or a speech or design a class or blogs without feeling like you know who you are and you know what you're saying, right? There's an exercise that I think is really cool. And sometimes it can be hard, and I love it. And that is called it's called spiral writing. And I think that every writer should play with this. Sometimes just in the morning before you actually sit down and try to write. And that is that you can either find one sentence in something that you've written, or a line from a poem that touches you, or whatever. Just write a sentence Or if you can't think of anything to say, I remember ... Write whatever it is on the top of that page, right? That one sentence, or I remember. And then set the timer for 6 minutes and write, right? Just write. Don't think about it. Don't, right? And then the timer goes off. Close your eyes just for a moment, receive, and then read to yourself what you just wrote. Pick out one sentence within what you've just written and put that on a separate piece of paper and set the timer for 6 minutes and do it again. And do it one more time after that. And what that does is it loosens your mind. And also, because you're not thinking, you're just writing and writing, it's remarkable what comes out. What you really thought about, right? And so doing, particularly if you're writing something that you want to then hold forth as a story about your life or a way into something, the I remember or I don't remember really is such an interesting exercise. So I would do that. I would also, writers groups are really wonderful. If you have a friend whom you want to say, okay, let's meet for tea every Tuesday and write together, right? And sometimes if you feel really comfortable, let's read our stuff to each other. Just get into that process. Again, it's a muscle. It's just it's a practice, just like everything that we do. To get better at, we just have to do it. And we have to circumvent our nervousness, our shyness, our I suck at this. I can't, what is wrong with me? It's just getting more comfortable with putting it out there.
All right. That was a nice technique to close this conversation. Yeah. And your website is lindasparrowe.com. Is that correct?
It is. And there's an E at the end of my name. So Sparrowe with an E.
Okay. It's LINDASPARROWE.com. Fantastic. Thank you so much for being with us here on the show.
Well, thanks for having me. It was such a treat.
Oh, I'm sure the listeners are going to find this amazing as to how many tools you have given them to go forward with their writing journey.
And they're welcome to connect with me if they have questions or what have you. I'm pretty open to that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Listeners, as always, follow the podcast, rate the podcast, leave a review from your podcast app of choice, and follow me on Instagram at YP for all things digital media and lifestyle. I'll see you back again with another interesting guest and another interesting topic. Until then, it's bye saying so long.